Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. We are still in the country of Nepal, a beautiful resort, as the tour begins to come to a close. I have selected this time to give you what I would call an advanced message. It's not simple. It's difficult to understand. It's more than esoteric. It's beyond that. And many will not understand. But I wish to do very best I can to present to you the reason why human beings have such a difficult time approaching peace. Why there's such a difficult time seeming to climb a ladder from where you are and what you believe is reality to that place where you have peace with yourself, a connection with spirit, and the oneness that so many speak of. It's difficult for all. It's difficult for those in this land. It's difficult for any human being on the planet. Some cultures make it easier, but even then, it goes against something that is primal in the human being. And so this particular message is going to be difficult to grasp. So I want to give metaphors and try to ask you to put yourself in these places and answer the questions along the way that I will present to you. Not long ago, many of you in this room got a chance to board an airplane and fly to the Himalayas. And the excitement was there as they flew to the mountains and you saw the beauty, the purity of such a mountain range. You got to see the famous Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on earth. You're in the right place at the right time, and the weather was spectacular. So let's examine, just for a moment, the attributes of that particular adventure. When you started, you climbed into the machine, you put on your seatbelt, and you flew to altitude. So let's look at where you were when you started. You're on the ground. Most human beings are in this particular place. There's a little bit of pollution. Perhaps pollution in this particular example would be the challenges of life. The pollution that gets in the way of clear thinking, of clear seeing, where you have fears and troubles of what's coming, or perhaps you're dealing with that which is a disease or some kind of malady, something that would disturb you, that keeps you, literally, from the love and the peace that we speak of. You may be here on this trip or just listening to this, but this is where most humans are. Day-to-day life creates these challenges. There is fear, there is anger, there is frustration, there is unhappiness. There is also the reverse, but we haven't got there yet. Because most human beings wallow in that which is the issues of negativity. And that even is applying to those who try and know better and wish to achieve that which is higher, which to have some kind of path to enlightenment, but they're also part of that which is the pollution of life. The machine takes off, and pretty soon you realize the pollution starts to drop away. You can see it out the window. The air becomes clearer. You can feel it in the aircraft. You can breathe better. And then you start looking out the window, and you realize it's crystal clear. You're above the clouds. You might even say, at this level, you're above all of the troubles that you came with. Dear ones, this is the euphoria that pilots sense all of the time. You'd be interested to know that even those veteran pilots who have been flying for 20 and 30 years, when they get above the clouds, there's something that happens, a bit of euphoria. They can't help it, because it's right in front of them. They're above all of the issues of life. They are free. Ask any pilot why they continue, and it'll be the same answers as the mountain climber. They're above the clouds. They're above all things that they were born into. And for the short moments that they're above those clouds, they are different, and they feel different, and it's beautiful. And that's where you were in that aircraft, a euphoria of looking at nature. The Himalayas are grand. The idea of how they were formed on the earth is spectacular. Snow-covered mountains that are just beyond beautiful. So let's stop there. I just gave you two realities. One, you're on the ground fighting the pollution, and one, you're above the clouds, where everything below you doesn't bother you anymore. Two complete different realities. Now here is the question, and where it starts to get difficult. Which one is real? And you would say, well, they're both real. I experienced them both. And so I would say to you, the next question is, if you experienced both of them, are they both with you now? Now, there's two kinds of humans. The one who is based in linearity and is focused only on what is before them, which they call the now. And they would say, well, I had to come down, and I'm currently in the pollution. The second kind of human understands that all reality is always together, that you do not have to linearize any of them. They exist as one. But the only thing that the first human being and most human beings see or don't see is the clock. You live in a linearity that says, I can only be in one reality at a time. So I'm on the ground currently, and I'm polluted. And therefore there is fear. And therefore there is anger. And therefore there is disappointment. And you say, I can hardly wait to find a way again to get in the machine and get above the clouds. Dear ones, I want you to ask a photon. Here is a photon of light for you. Hello, photon. Dear photon, can you be in two places at once? And the photon says, of course I can, because this is the physics of light. I just gave you the reality of a photon. Dear one, your consciousness soars above anything that would even remotely resemble a photon. Your consciousness is allied with God. And yet, you cannot be in two places at the same time? The answer is, oh, yes, you can. But you won't. Because you are born with the core belief that your reality only exists second to second where you are. The truth is this: all realities, ones you've experienced and ones that you have not, are all part of you. Totally part of you. The issue of climbing the ladder of enlightenment is that you see a ladder. There is no ladder. There is only understanding. If you could wipe away that core misconception that you are linked to the linear time, suddenly you can be in the sky. Right now, all of you who went on that trip, I want you to think clearly. You're in the airplane. How does it feel? How does it feel? Look out the window with me now and enjoy the spectacular Himalayas. There's Mount Everest. Revisit this right now. Is it real or is it not? And the answer is it is. And what you have just done is to be in two places at the same time. The master knows how this works and teaches that you can sit, and through the process of meditation, you can combine the realities even into the future, where you literally will claim the enlightenment of things that are the most joyful on the planet, and also the things that perhaps would be challenging. And when you start to combine them, you start to realize you can balance between them. You don't turn one off, get in the airplane and turn one on. You're always in both. Do you see how this would work? You're always in both. And if that's the case, you can start balancing the euphoria of being above the clouds with the reality that you think is of being in the pollution. And when you start looking at both of them, the brain starts to ask, where would I like to balance? And the answer is, I want to balance above the clouds. You can walk from place to place with the enlightenment, not of climbing a ladder, of trying to find something better, but instead you are something better. There is no linearity to the enlightened oneness. The linearity is gone. And in this great land, and all of the lands you've been in so far, the process is to meditate in order to create this within you. Someone says, I've been trying for years. If I could only get to this place, I've tried to have peace, but I cannot. I just told you why. Because you're stuck with a clock. And the core information that says your reality is where you stand, and it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. Your reality is where you take it, dear ones. And some of you have to sit and think of these things and be quiet and concentrate in these things. There is also future reality. The one who has the disease, who is above the clouds without the disease. The one who's having difficulty with their biology, who is above the clouds and no longer has it. You're looking into a future that exists if you choose for it to. And that is why This mind of yours, this quantumness of oneness of yours, not only extends to the past and the present as you see it, but also a future that you will create yourself. This is why you can be joyful over the healing that you're going to have. That you can be joyful of always knowing what it's like above the clouds. And no matter what it is that you think is before you, or the worries, you can take a deep breath, knowing that your reality is wherever you want it to be. Those will be angry around you because they're walking in the soup of the pollution, and you're not. You're not. Because you figured out how to be in two places at the same time. That is physics. That is you. You belong to this planet, and you belong to how it works. And if a photon can do it, you can do it. But you have to then talk yourself into knowing and understanding what a quantum reality actually is. And it is not where you think it is. It's combined with you above the clouds. Some won't understand it, and some will. It can be a turning point in your life. There's no better place than in these areas to speak of these things which are understood by the masters. Difficult to explain, very. You have heard it many times by some of the monks who try to give you the idea of what it might be like. And yet, they only have the linearity of speech. What about the photon? It exists in two places at once. That's science. What about the science for you? You can do the same. Namaste. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. This is the last meeting in Nepal where all of you will be together for a channel. But there are those leaving, and so we wish to address something. And some of you may think this will be amusing. I hope so. A group of old souls, many of you, have been with us in this amazing journey for almost 20 days. You all know about yin and yang. You know about opposites. You know about duality. You know about that which is negative and positive. You know about that which is high and low. And so we wish to expose this in a fun way. The ones who are here are old souls. And if you talk to a local, they would know what an old soul was. It is a soul who has been reincarnated on this planet many, many times. And each time you come, you learn things, you experience things, you solve things you haven't done before. And over a long period of time, you gain wisdom. You know how things work. You look at things differently. And that's who's here. And that's who I address now. And yet there is a far larger audience listening to this as we wind down this tour, this experience, this journey in India and Nepal. So what I wish to do is paint a picture of how sometimes things are seen. There's the old soul. There's the wisdom of the old soul. And then there's the tourist. So let's look at this journey and pieces of it from two sides. But there are those listening in a greater audience that are tourists, who may not understand what an old soul sees and experiences. Through the eyes of an old soul, there is one thing that is seen. Through the eyes of a tourist, there's something else. And so we play the game of opposites. When you first arrived here, let us say it's the tourist. And they would say to those later when they go home, you won't believe the traffic in India, if you can even call it that. It is amazing. Who shares the road in which direction they go? There doesn't seem to be any semblance of order. There are no rules. They share it with humans, cars, buses, bicycles, cows, pigs, chickens, and they're all going different directions all the time. How can they possibly exist? It is one of the strangest, most complex and confusing things I've ever seen. That's the tourist. What did you see? The old soul looks at it and says, you won't believe what we saw. There are so many people here. A fifth of the world's population lives here. And they somehow have figured it out. Who goes where? They share the streets with themselves, with the animals, with all of the vehicles, with all those walking, and somehow they all know where they're going. They all make room for the next one. There seems to be lots of horn honking where they tell the one behind them or in front, I'm here. Watch out. I'm here. Somehow they have come together in the most amazing way, going every direction possible. And they've figured it out. They live together, even on the streets. You think it's chaos, I see harmony. The metaphor for this, dear ones, is the planet. The planet must share the road of life in the same way, without the rules of one religion or another, or one country of another, and somehow figure out, honking to let the other one know, watch out, I'm behind you, watch out, I'm in front of you so I won't hurt you. Going from here to there, sharing it with the animals of the planet, with the earth, with each other, in ways that may seem chaotic, and yet you figure it out. You know where you're going. And the old soul will come to India and smile and say, look at this. There's no place like it on the planet. It may seem chaotic, but they figured it out. They know how to get along. They know how to move in the streets. The tourist will go to the Ganges and they will say, you won't believe what we saw. Throngs, thousands, in heat which is stifling, even at night over 90 degrees, 34, or even greater. You can hardly breathe, and there they are going down to get a swim in the river. It's a strange culture. And every single night there's some kind of party. And they do it for so long, and they do it for so long. How can they do such a thing? It's an odd thing indeed that they would do this. The tourist goes away, shaking their head. The old soul sees something different. The old soul may not be a Hindu. The old soul may be from Europe or some of the other Western places. But the old soul sees the joy. And they see those who have made the journey with joy in their faces, in their prayers, completing something that is so special to them. Tears in their eyes as they wash themselves and look at one another, as they make a pilgrimage to a very special, unique place where they can have oneness with Spirit. It doesn't matter how many there are, families together. And you want to just look at them. And you want to give them the high five of a namaste. And you want to say, job well done, dear human being. I understand you. For the God in you is the God in me. And it may not be my culture, but I know you. Congratulations. There'll come a day when the world can see this. Not the Ganges, but the celebration that may look odd. The oneness of Spirit in so many lands, in so many branches of the one tree, doing their own ceremonies, looking strange with all of their prayer rugs or their statues or their prophets. And you'll be able to look at each other and say, job well done. For I see the same in you as I have in me. There is a oneness of Spirit that cannot be faked. And you feel it no matter what the celebration is. We see it in your eyes. We see it in the tears of joy. Because you know the oneness of the Spirit inside you is the creative source of the planet. That's the old soul. And there's going to be more old souls that will look upon others and understand and see the compassion and not look at the process or the culture or the language or the procedure, but they will look inside. Job well done. It's the difference between the tourist who doesn't care and the old soul who's been around and knows so much. There's so many other things you could say. The tourist will look at that in this land and they'll say there's so many temples and so many statues and some of them look so odd with so many arms. We don't know what these people really believe. The tourist will go then to the monastery. They say it lasted forever. We don't know what was happening. It was sore. We sat on the floor. We're not used to that. There was music we've never heard. We just had to endure it until it was over. That's the tourist. It was quaint, they may say. The old soul knows about the statues. They're helpers. Beautiful. Like so many religions on the planet would have object saints, other things that they can look at to help reduce the negativity. One for health, one for long life, and tradition, ancient tradition that makes them look the way they do because every single thing means something beautiful. And as far as the monastery, and as far as sitting there enduring, you know, the old soul will say there's layers. There's layers of celebration. There's one for the health of all humanity. And we partook of the bread as a symbol that no one would starve for the planet. We went through another wave for longer life and peace for the planet. We went through another wave, and every single one of them was compassionate and beautiful and meaningful. A group of those dedicated. That's all they do. Yes, it took a while, but it should. That's all they do. They bless the planet over and over, knowing that the thoughts and the intentions and the compassion of the few affect the whole. And the old soul will say, this may not be my way, but I agree. Job well done, you would say, old soul, from wherever you were, as you watch everything you see and you look into it and you see the oneness, the purpose, the reason. Perhaps there'll come a day when there are no more tourists. And when they come to a place like this and their eyes are wide open and they see what it means, the togetherness, the family ties, the beauty, the purpose, the meaning of Namaste. And they will see in these cultures that you have visited things they see in no other culture on earth. Because there is a togetherness, a beauty. And it hides in the things you don't understand. But the old souls in this group will take this away and take it home and measure their words carefully when somebody says, how was India and Nepal? And it won't be through the eyes of a tourist. Job well done for all of you. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. We come to the end of the journey. The time spent in this great region for so many of the old souls in the room will be unforgettable. Yesterday I gave a comparison of what a tourist sees and what an old soul sees. I told you about a man when we first began the journey. I told you about a man, an American, who discovered his Indian heritage and came back to this land to recapture that which he felt in his Akash. Now, dear ones, we have said so many times that the Akash is not a linear record, but a soup of energy, where sometimes the karmic things come forward and sometimes the things of the past that have had the most energy will come forward. It is a new energy on the planet where this particular record is starting to activate itself inside old souls. And what this means is that you're going to start having remembrances that may or may not make sense. How old are you? I don't mean this time. The lifetimes you have had for many of you stretch to the beginning, where you literally can track it back to the beginning days of Lemuria, some of the beginning teachings, and from that place perhaps to this place. It may be in there, dear ones. Some of you have already related to it, and many do not. And yet, almost all of you spent some time here. And the reason is because the study that you learned in Lemuria was also that which you could continue here. And from here you went other places. So the remembrance or the energy may not then be activated for you to say, well, yes, I've had lifetimes here. But dear ones, there are some other things that some of you have felt. Did you feel the sweetness of truth? Did you relate to the oneness blessing of Namaste? Did somehow that which is the energy in your kosh relate to anything here? Not that you were here, dear ones, or you had a lifetime, but you remembered the love. When we started this journey, I told you about a man. And as I just mentioned, he was an American with the Indian heritage and returned here. 50 years is what it took for him to reignite his studies. And if you look into his history, Guru Deva studied with the masters. He achieved great enlightenment, great oneness. And then I told you that he decided to connect India back to Lemuria. And he left for the island of Kauai, where as an American he purchased the land and started that which would become a temple. The temple that he started, he never saw. But he made some rules along the way, and he had an epiphany I would like to tell you about. This is the rest of the story about Guru Deva. Guru Deva spent so much time here, you would think, well, then he must have gone to Varanasi. And he must have bathed in the Ganges at some point in time, in the self-realization of the end of the cycle of past lives. You'd be right, and he did. But like so many others before him who had things to learn and had life's purpose, he was not alone in having a vision. For he didn't just wash himself and pray. He had an explosion. And we spoke of this before, an explosion of enlightenment. He saw the whole picture. He saw Lemuria. He saw what he was having to accomplish in this moment. As soon as he touched the water, he had an explosion, a vision so real. He was to build an Indian temple perfectly with Indians and craftsmen from India. No matter how long it took, he was to build it on Lemuria, so that the day that it was then dedicated and became active and blessed, a tie between that which was Lemuria and that which is India would take place. But he didn't know why. He worked the puzzle for many years. He set the stage, the design was there, he collected the materials, and he died in 2001. It wasn't until after 2012 that that temple was complete. And that is because he could use no materials other than the ones found in India. The funding was slow, the craftsmen couldn't always come, and the temple waited and waited. It had to be built correctly, as though it were in India, slowly, properly, paid for by those who would come and understand and help fund it because they felt the oneness of what he was doing. Today it stands complete after 2012. And what he did not understand or know is that this planet, when he started, had no future, really. For the predictions said that you might not make it. And you did. And the precession of the equinoxes began, and humans decided to stay, and the temple got completed. That's when the connection between the India on Kauai and Lemuria and the India here began. The idea of the oneness connection, literally through the planet, was the vision that he got when he touched the water in the Ganges. And then I told you something startling. I told you that he's returned. I told you that there's a boy in southern India. And if you follow the belief system of the Hindu, you would say, well, he's not supposed to necessarily return. For the Ganges would then represent the end of the cycle of lifetimes. But dear ones, we told you this, and this is what you need to know. It does indeed mean the end of the cycle, the old cycle of karmic interaction, of suffering, of all of the things that he went through. And he has returned as a new human, without the karma that he had before, completely and totally clean of all energies and ready to begin something new. And what I did not tell you is this is an ascended master. He carries with him the teachings of those he studied with for 50 years in this land. And he still has it. And as he starts to awaken, something will occur to him. Coming from southern India will be a movement of young people led by this man, Guru Deva. Another name perhaps, but one that might even be close to his Indian name, for he'll remember it. And I mentioned what that movement might be, but I didn't tell you who would do it. It will be him. And when he reaches the certain age, he will start a movement. And it may have one of many names, but what it will represent is the purity of the Hindu. And what that means to him and the young people is this. They will look around and say, we believe in the oneness and the respect and the enlightenment of all humankind. We believe in the oneness of all living things. And that includes the elementals, that includes Gaia, that includes all that is. And this is the initial prime directive of the Hindu, is to that respect and find that oneness in all things above all else. And he will then convince those around him that Hindus are killing Hindus by pouring into the air that which is killing his family, all of those families around, the animals, Gaia, the trees. And it will be logical and make sense. And all around him will be those who say, we never thought of this. We are actually celebrating one thing and killing it at the same time. It will start to sweep the country, not from the government, but from the young people who say the pure Hindu is one who will not kill each other by carelessness of the pollution that is here. It may take 15 years, but this man will create the new India. And you land in this great city, and you will not see what you see here. And it's not going to come from rules and laws. It's going to come from common sense and an ascended master who used to be Guru Deva. The connection to Lemuria is complete. And that is what is needed for so many to feel it and to know it. And if you look around, dear ones, that truly is what's missing here. A consciousness of purity, where you will live long lives and the explosion of enlightenment will be far easier without wearing a mask. And so it begins. And the ones who then return are the ascended ones, all of them bathed in the Ganges. All of them are returning not with the old cycle, it's over, but the cycle of the new human who sees things far differently and has them make sense to the masses. Guru Deva is not done. Do you feel these things coming? I want you to take home what you felt here, that is the oneness of all things. I want you to take home and spread that which you've seen, which is beautiful and perfect and godly and makes total sense to you. Namaste. And so it is.